And today we're talking to Ruby James, who is the marketing coordinator of the Career Tourism Office in London. And she's going to be talking to us a little bit about her career and Career's role in London and how they've survived COVID and what they're looking at doing in the future. So first of all, Ruby, hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me.
That's a pleasure, and always a pleasure to have you, especially as you're a board member of ANTOR'S. So you obviously know an awful lot about the organisation, and we'll come on to that first. But what I don't really know much about is you and your career. So perhaps you could give me a little bit of insight as to how you ended up where you are today.
Yeah, so I'm relatively new to the travel industry. My background is more in Korean culture. I became really interested in Korea sort of 10-15 years ago when I was younger. Studied Korean and Chinese at university and was working part-time for quite a while at the Korean Cultural Centre while I was studying. It's a brilliant organisation just around the corner from us in Trafalgar Square. They kind of facilitate cultural exchange between the UK and Korea and introduce Korean culture to people in the UK with a variety of different film festivals, concerts and other cultural programmes. So yeah, that's where my kind of experience came from, and then I moved over to the Career Tourism Organisation in 2020, which is obviously an interesting time to be starting in the travel industry, but I have been really enjoying it so far and learning a lot.
That's fantastic. And what grasped you about Korea? How did you actually first become really interested? I found it a fascinating destination, and it's got some amazing attractions and history and culture. But what grasped you first of all?
I think for me at first, which is the case of for a lot of people, especially young people in the UK in the last few years, was the Korean pop culture. And we refer to it as the Korean wave, the wave of cultural exports, films, dramas, K-pop that has really kind of swept the globe. And I think the UK was a couple of steps behind in many ways. I think, it's really capturing imaginations around the world, and then came to kind of Europe and the English-speaking world. So yeah, when I first became interested in Korea, there weren't a lot of people who had heard of K-pop or Korean cinema, but that's sort of really steadily grown over the years.
Oh, fantastic. And as I mentioned, you're a board member of ANTOR'S. So I was just wondering what you consider to be the benefits of ANTOR membership. I know Korea is one of our longest standing members. So they obviously do enjoy being a member of ANTOR and find it very beneficial. But as you're quite new to the industry and to the ANTOR board, what would you consider to be the main benefits?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's loads of benefits from our perspective. I mean, as I mentioned, I'm very new to the travel industry, and so it's been massively beneficial to have joined the organisation, to have taken over the position on the board, and to be it's just given me a brilliant opportunity to learn more from other tourism boards with more experience and what they're doing, and compare what we're doing, and also with the events that ANTOR has continued to put on, especially during COVID, the virtual events have worked really well, and has just given us that space to continue networking and meeting people, and to still feel connected at a time where things have felt quite isolating because of COVID.
Yes, absolutely, and that's been one of the main drivers, I think, of the organisation, is really keeping everyone together on the same page and moving forward out of the pandemic. So the Career Tourism Organisation is probably an enormous structure back in Korea, but I know over here, like most destinations these days, you're a relatively small team covering a very important market. Tell me a little bit about the structure in your office. There's just 2 or 3 of you, I believe, is that right?
At the moment, there are 4 of us. We've had quite a few staff changes over the last couple of years. We tend to be between 4 and 6, and we're hoping to grow our team in the next couple of years as well. So we have our director and deputy director, who are both here from head office for 3 years, and then 2 of us are employed locally.
And so that's exciting for anyone listening to this. They can watch this space and see if there's any opportunities in the office to come and join you in the future, which is great. So you've told us how long you've been working for the Career Tourism Organisation and how long you've been in the industry. So it is a very short time, and obviously if I ask you what changes you've witnessed during that time, it's going to be quite phenomenal, because you've gone from entering COVID into climbing out of COVID. Have you seen any differences in the actual industry and the way the industry, and in particular the media, are responding to you and to your story about Korea?
Yeah, I have. I think, like I said, it's been a real learning curve, because I've been learning about the industry, and I think everyone around me has also been learning to adapt to the COVID situation and what it means for travel. I would just go back to what I was saying before about the Korean wave, and I think even between 2020 and now, there's been a real sort of raising awareness around Korean culture, with Korean food, new Korean restaurants popping up in London, for example, or I mean, just before we went into lockdown, Parasite winning the Oscar, which really felt like a big turning point. And then Netflix as well has really grown during the lockdown, and Korean series like Squid Game have really become have had just enormous success. So I think that impacts on us as a destination as well. And you know, the media interest in Korea, and people starting to sort of wake up to the potential of travel to Korea, and the new challenge for us is how we kind of translate that into really showcasing Korea as a destination, and getting people out there as soon as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, the Korean wave has definitely made it to the Hampton Court area where I live, because we have some very lovely restaurants not so far away. And our favorite supermarket is a Korean supermarket, because they have the best fish, the freshest fish in the area. And my husband goes there with regularly, probably once a week, to collect our fish. So that's interesting as well, because it's a requirement that they have brought with their own culture that is benefiting us, which is really exciting as well. And I don't know, do you know how many Korean people live in the UK nowadays? Because that always makes a difference as well, doesn't it? If people are integrating into the UK culture and workforce, then you obviously become more susceptible and keen to get to know about their culture and history and country.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have sort of numbers off the top of my head, but it's a fairly small community, but definitely one that's growing. There's the sort of Koreatown of London is located in New Malden, not too far from Kingston, where they have New Malden High Street. It has the most amazing Korean restaurants, Korean supermarkets, definitely worth a visit. But I've just seen a massive increase in the last few years of the number of Korean businesses in central London. And, you know, it's a community that is really keen to share its culture with people in the UK. So restaurants, supermarkets, but also, you know, Korean beauty shops, for example, Korean skincare, makeup is really gaining attention as well. And last summer we actually did a program that was really successful. Obviously, in the light of not being able to travel to Korea during COVID, we put on a walking tour called Where London Meets Korea, and we took a group of people around to all of the major spots where you can experience Korean culture in the UK. Which, yeah, was received really, really well. People were really excited to learn more.
Well, that's exactly where I'm talking about, New Malden. So you've got that's exactly the area that I was talking about, and that's a really very innovative idea, a walking tour like that. Are you still doing it, or is that just a one-off?
So we did it as a one-off last year, and then it was so popular, we received so many applications that we did another one to follow up. And we're hoping, I think this year, as the weather gets nicer again, that we can invite more people and do it again. And we've had interest outside of London as well. We're looking at potentially putting on a walking tour in Belfast and other locations around the UK. You know, obviously our priority this year as things open up is to get people out to Korea, but also, you know, just to continue that interest here as well.
That's fantastic. That's really, really very innovative and creative. Well done. So Korea, how's Korea actually recovering from COVID at the moment? I know we have to address the COVID protocols. What's the situation at the moment? Are we able to go to Korea? Are we still waiting for Korea to open up? What's your latest?
So we are still waiting for now. Korea has really put safety first kind of throughout the pandemic, and it has been really successful in keeping cases down, especially at the beginning before there was any vaccine developed. And then last year they had a very successful vaccine rollout. So I think by September they had over 90% of the adult population vaccinated. And so it was starting to open up to certain destinations. They were welcoming tourists from Singapore towards the end of last year. That has kind of temporarily been suspended because of Omicron. Obviously, it spread so quickly, and so their response was to be cautious with that and to see how things develop, and put on hold any further opening up. But so currently there is a quarantine period for all international visitors to Korea that has just been reduced as of last week from 10 days to 7 days. So I think that's definitely a step in the right direction, and I think we are going to see more loosening of those restrictions over the next couple of months. So watch this space is what I would say for now.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And so your plans, you've mentioned the walking tours in maybe continuing those. What other plans have you got to promote Korea in the UK over the next few years? Is there any other angles? You go to a Korean film festival or food festival, or have you got any other plans?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we want to continue raising awareness around Korean culture, working very closely with the Korean Cultural Centre, like you say, film festivals, food festivals, events that we can put on here that really inspire people. We have been working over the last year with Son Heung-min, who's a very popular Korean football player who has been appointed as our tourism ambassador. So that's reaching really new audiences for us, who don't know much about Korea but are starting to sort of awaken to its potential. And I think just kind of what we really want to showcase is the really wide variety of experiences you can have in Korea. So I think people are quite aware of Seoul and the big city and that kind of amazing coming together of the traditional culture and the modern fast-paced development. But also, as people come out of COVID, people are looking maybe for more off the beaten track destinations, wellness, nature, and Korea has so much potential for that as well. It's a relatively small country, so it's easy to travel around. You can spend a few days in the city and then go and escape into the mountains, maybe stay in a Buddhist temple for a couple of nights, or head to the beach. So just to show that it's really something for everyone.
And I'm guessing that you go that far, and now with sustainability and everybody thinking differently about how they travel and what that impact is going to have on the world, you would perhaps recommend that people spend 3 weeks in Korea or longer, so that they can really engage with the culture and immerse themselves in everything that they find there. I mean, in an ideal world, and people can take more time out now because they can also sort of work from wherever they're holidaying. What would you say? Would you say 3 weeks is enough to get a really good idea of Korea on a sort of leisure and holiday basis, or do you feel that you'd probably need a bit longer, or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think 2 to 3 weeks is a really good amount of time. And like you say, any longer is not as realistic for people. But I think it's really becoming one of those bucket list destinations where people become really interested in Korean culture. They maybe experience it here, and they spend a long time planning kind of the trip of a lifetime. So people do tend to want to spend longer periods of time out there. And like I say, it just allows you to experience all sides of the country. So spend some time in the cities, soaking up the culture and the fast pace and the shopping and the food markets. And then, like I say, go hiking or, visit the demilitarized zone between North and South Korea, which is a really unique and really fascinating experience. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I always recommend Jeju Island, which is right down in the south, the largest island. It's a volcanic island and a UNESCO natural heritage site. It's just the most stunning landscapes, really interesting culture as well. So yeah, I think 2 to 3 weeks is great.
And I think the cities can be joined up quite easily by train. Is that right? There are good train connections in Korea?
Absolutely. So you can get from Seoul in the north to Busan, which is the second largest city right down in the south, in about 2.5 hours by high-speed train. So it's really, really doable. The trains are sort of very reasonably priced as well, and everything is very easy to navigate for English speakers, all the signage and announcements and things like that. So it is a very easy destination to navigate.
Well, that sounds fascinating. I mean, it just sounded a really, as you say, bucket list destination. And of course, you'll be keeping the ANTOR website up to date with your walking tours and everything else that you're doing to promote Korea, which is great, Ruby. Thank you very much. And so, what would your kind of last words be to somebody? For somebody looking for a career in tourism? Because what background do you come from? Is it did you do a degree? Did you come straight from school? What was your kind of educational path into the cultural aspect of Korea?
Yeah, so like I said, I became really interested in Korea as a teenager, and I was always really interested in languages as well. So I studied Korean and Chinese at university,
right.
And as part of that, I had lots of experiences to travel. And so if you're interested in a career in destination marketing, I would just say, really immerse yourself in the destinations or the regions that you're interested in. Learn as much as you can about the culture, meet people, travel if you can, and that passion will really shine through.
That's fantastic. We've been looking at the ecosystem of tourism and how its tentacles reach out into absolutely every aspect of education and skills. And you've got you've gone from your language skills into tourism, and you can take out of that, you can take your marketing and your other skills that you've learned from your role in destination marketing into another aspect of marketing, maybe some Korean product or something like that. And I think that's what's fascinating about the industry, is trying to encourage people to come in from outside the industry, gain new skill sets, and then they can obviously go into other industries or stay in it. So that's one of the things that ANTOR'S trying to encourage at the moment, careers in the travel and tourism industry. But thank you very much for your time, Ruby. Look forward to seeing you at the next board meeting. And as I say, I think careers definitely on my bucket list, and I'm sure everyone listening to this will put it on theirs too. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.